It's something that I'd thought about for some time. The sacrifice that these men and women make is extraordinary, and I felt like I wanted to show my support for them in some way, and this was a logical way to do it. I went to Landstuhl, Germany. That is the site of Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, which is a hospital that's run by the U.S. Army. It's the largest United States hospital that's outside of the continental United States. I decided to take 2 weeks at Landstuhl because I started thinking about the sacrifice that these men and women in uniform make, and we've been in these conflicts for 8 years now, and I felt like I had really done nothing to support these troops at all. And I felt like this was one small way that I could show my support. We had flights that came from Iraq and Afghanistan daily, sometimes twice a day, and the flights would carry anywhere from 6 to 20 wounded soldiers, and of those there would be a handful that would be sick enough to be in the intensive care unit. I saw the ones that were the worst. These men and women are very special. Not that every individual is not special, but they're particularly special. They have not been forced, they have chosen to serve in the armed forces and put themselves in harm's way, for our benefit. In the 2 weeks I was there, in terms of the injured patients that came in, there were no lives lost. As parents, we all, like it or not, are set examples for our children and serve as role models, whether we consciously understand that or not. And that was a secondary reason. I think that I wanted to walk the walk in terms of giving back, for living in a great country at a great time. I don't consider what I did heroic. It didn't really require any bravery or any risk, really, in my part. I mean, I think that I was fortunate to have the skills that were needed to serve these men and women. Stepping outside of yourself and sacrificing a little bit of time and a little bit of effort to help in whatever way you can is enriching, and every time I do it, I feel really good about it and wish that I did it more.
Everything was unusual at that point in time. In the medical school faculty, there was no one outside of myself and those that I brought with me who had ever worked with anybody in medical anesthesia before, because up to that time it had all been nurse anesthesia. If I was going to teach biochemistry to medical students, then I better find out what medical students really needed to know and to make sure that they were taught that. The number of deaths from anesthesia were extremely high at that point in time because the nurses did not have the adequate medical training to cope with some of the problems that they faced. People in any profession are entitled to the best possible tools that they can get, and the fact that the copper kettle came along was a better tool is just one of the usual events in the progress of any any one of our specialties, I think. I'm just grateful for those that we taught and that thought what we were doing was on the right side and advertised it around the rest of the country and eventually the world.
It was a unique tsunami from what the scientists were saying as well, is because it didn't just hit one side of the island, it wrapped around the entire island. Every bay was affected by anywhere from 25 to 45 foot high waves. On September 29th, a earthquake and a subsequent tsunami occurred in American Samoa, and I was called within probably a few hours after the event happened, where major loss of life occurred. It was on American territory, and I was asked to be a part of a delegation of 50 members from Washington, D.C. to respond to American Samoa. What I found from the people were incredibly gracious and warm. They were open to receive the help. They knew that we were coming and they were awaiting our arrival. The people that I worked with one of two psychologists on the entire island. And when she saw that, when I arrived, she was saying, "You're the person we've been waiting for." You're supported by the people that have been there because so few people know what you've seen. There are moments when I remember the grief and moments when I remember the pain and the pain of those who lost so much. The heroes that I think are to be celebrated are the families that wake up every morning that lost two children, or the parents who have to get up and try to respond to their other child. There was a story of a young man who had a little boy who was 11 years old, who was with his sister and brother, his 8-year-old sister and 10-year-old brother, and they were at school when the earthquake hit, and their school was on a mountain, and their home was on the other mountain, and their village was by the water. And so they left the school after the earthquake, and they were running to safety of their home. And on their way down the mountain or down the hill, they reached the bottom when the tsunami was coming. They turned around, and on their way back, they were running, and the little boy, the 11-year-old, was holding the 8-year-old's hand and the 10-year-old's hand, his brother and sister's hand, and he was running with all his might. And he said a black wall of water was coming at him, and when it hit him, it pushed him up into a coconut tree, and he held on for all he was worth, but as he held on to the tree, he had to let go of his sister and brother's hands. And he lost his sister and his brother, and his sister's body was found, but his brother's was not. And when I met with the family, I met with the mom and dad, and I asked the question today, far away from that, where do the parents begin to grieve when they have lost two children and their 11-year-old is feeling guilty because he let go of their hands? I was able to share with the families that there are so many on the mainland, which is the United States here, on the mainland praying for them, and that I came to bring them their support and their love. And on the way back, I'm able to say the people of American Samoa are so grateful, and they will keep us forever in their prayers.